Well, I'm so excited to be interviewing the most fearless journalist in all of sports, Jason Whitlock. Mr. Whitlock, how are you doing?
I'm great, Brian. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll start out with this. Why did you become a journalist?
Why did I become a journalist? Originally, when I went to college on a football scholarship, Ball State, and originally my major was accounting, and I got in my first math class for accounting, and was like, man, I don't think this is a good idea. And so a friend of mine that I was friends with in high school that also went to college with me was like, hey man, you read the sports section every day of the newspaper. You should be a sports writer. And it instantly made sense to me like, wow, I can make a living just writing about sports, going to sporting events or whatever. And so my second semester at college, I changed my major to journalism and, made the commitment that I wanted to be a sports writer and I wanted to mimic the career of a guy who wasn't a sports writer, but a guy named Mike Royko, who was a general columnist in Chicago. And I wanted to be the sports writing version of Mike Royko.
All right. Why do you think social media has been bad for our society?
Well, mostly because I think it's dumbed down our conversation. When Twitter first started out, it's 140 characters, and now it's 280 characters, but it's not uh, given. It's not built for full context. It's not built for nuanced conversation. It's not built for the kind of communication. Again, when you and I are talking over this Zoom, we can see each other's expressions. Uh, the body language is important, and we have a lot of time to talk here as long as you and I want to talk, and so we can explain ourselves fully. Social media is not built for that. It's built for tension, division, conflict, and a lot of social media is manipulated by Northern California and the political point of view of Northern California, of Silicon Valley, and that is a very far left, very revolutionary political point of view that uh, accentuates or focuses on our differences rather than what we all have in common, that we're Americans. When I was growing up, most of us were Christians, and our identity was built around those two things: our shared religious faith, our shared belief in America. Now everything's based around skin color, sexuality, gender, and social media accentuates all that and highlights all of that and is built around that, and it's just created a polarization and division that we just haven't seen in quite some time. America's racial narrative, it seemed like we've all been on a track where we've been getting along better and better and better, and opportunities for black people and everybody was becoming more and more prevalent, all the way to the point that we elected Barack Obama president twice. And now here we are in 2021, and we're at each other's throats, and no one feels like we're going in a good direction race wise. I just think social media has contributed to a lot of that.
Why do you think you have the perception of being a polarizing figure?
Oh, I think we live in a time uh, where anybody that speaks an unvarnished truth is seen as controversial or polarizing. Anybody that doesn't go along with the groupthink of the corporate authoritarian media is seen as controversial or polarizing. And, I'm someone whose entire career has been built around, speaking what I believe to be the truth, my version of the truth or whatever. And just, I don't like groupthink. I don't like narratives that aren't based in reality or fact. And so I tend to say things that you're not supposed to say anymore, and talk about, you know, the reality again. I have had a family member who we felt was wrongly killed by Indianapolis sheriffs in May of 2012, and Tom Butler. Uh, hurt my family bad. He was tasered in the rain. We feel electrocuted. But I'm not someone who believes the police are out systematically killing black men. Again, the whole police brutality or police harming citizens, it's not some uh, media branding talking point for me. I've actually lived the experience and have been through the pain caused in families and have had to do a lot of reflection on how did my cousin Anton Butler, who I helped raise, how did he get in that position, and what are the best solutions for preventing that from happening again? And so it's like I understand that whole issue on a real level and have done a lot of research, thought into the issue. And I just won't go along with the media fear mongering level narrative that, like, as black men, we're all supposed to be afraid to leave our house. And oh my God, the police are out to get us and they'll kill us at any time. It's just not true. Having lived in the hood, having spent a lot of time in the hood, uh, we're not running around in the hood like, oh my God, the police may kill us any day now. Shit, we spend most time worried about the Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, uh, Junebug right there in our own neighborhood. And so saying stuff like that is seen as controversial and polarizing. How, I'm supposed to go on TV or use my media platform to convince everybody that, oh my God, at any moment the police may kill you for doing nothing. And it's bullshit, and I just won't do it.
All right. Speaking of someone who kind of has an opposite viewpoint of you in terms of police brutality, Colin Kaepernick, why do you think he had an identity issue?
Uh, I think all young people, including Jason Whitlock when he was young, we all struggle with our identity and figuring out who we are in the world. All of us. There's no person who comes into this world, whether it be here in Europe, Africa, Asia, where people struggle with their identities. Some people, and particularly here in America, where it's a melting pot, there's more racial diversity. Some people struggle more than others. And so Colin Kaepernick being mixed race, I think that complicates his identity issues that we all have. All of us have. I want to be crystal clear. I don't think he's special, and I'm not singling out mixed race kids. But I think their issues are more complicated because, sometimes they don't fit in with black people, sometimes they don't fit in with white people. They may appear black, but live or operate in a mostly white environment. And I just feel like Colin Kaepernick has been dealing with those issues for a long time. And a lot of people experience them most acutely in their 20s or teen years through their 20s. And Kaepernick has just struggled more than most and has been manipulated by his girlfriend, in my view, who is not black. She's Egyptian. Uh, and I just, the whole uh, kneeling, I don't think was thought out at all. he did it. He was upset. He got benched. His NFL career wasn't going the way that he wanted. He wasn't as popular. He saw himself as this great brand, and he was going to be what Patrick Mahomes or LeBron James or whomever. He was going to be that guy, and then his career fell apart, and he started sitting on the bench and upset uh, with America. And again, social media does so many things to confuse people and to make people think. Again, social media has convinced everybody that your skin color, black, white, brown, whatever, is the most important characteristic you have in life. It's just not true. It's racist thinking, particularly if you understand like American history and slavery and what drove racism. It's this kind of thinking that your skin color is your defining characteristic, and so I just think Cap has been struggling with all of that, and I think a lot of people when they get when they've been with that struggle, they want to have this great black moment where no one can question how black I am, and they overcompensate and do too much. And the next thing you know, they're taking a knee. And the next thing you know, even though they know nothing about what they're talking about, they're the face of some movement, some social justice movement to prove their blackness. And that's why, he can't talk about these issues. He tweets about them or other people talk for him. But he's just struggling with the identity issues that we all struggle with in our youth, and then I think when you're mixed race, I think it's even more of a struggle, and so he's just been struggling with that.
All right, what advice would you give to future journalists?
Oh man, what advice would I give to future journalists? Uh, you know, I don't know if this is great business advice, the way things are, but I mean, journalism is supposed to be a search for the truth, and have the courage to go on that search for the truth. It's not journalism isn't supposed to be some political agenda that you're executing. Journalism isn't supposed to be about individual brand building. Journalism isn't supposed to be about how can I land, a television show. Journalism is supposed to be a search for the truth wherever it leads, and exposure. And journalism is central to our republic, to our democracy, to our country. Uh, the founders of the country believed rightfully that if you fed the American public the truth, they would make informed decisions that would benefit the country. And we're not feeding the country the truth anymore. We're feeding them polarization and racial division and things that would generate clicks and or television ratings. And so I would just try to tell people, the future journalists, is try to develop the courage to stick to the truth and facts, and not to be a part of any groupthink, not to be a part of any movement that is somehow fearful of the truth. And that's what a lot of these movements are, and that's why they don't like facts. They don't want data and facts about police engagement with black people and how often it leads to violence. They don't want any of that data. They just want the narrative. And so I would just advise young people thinking about going into journalism, have the courage. Actually, do you have the courage to stick to the truth and to seek the truth?
All right, do you think the national anthem should be played before sporting events?
Uh, yes, I do, but I understand why teams are moving away from it. It's just like, why invite the controversy of playing the national anthem and put your athletes and other coaches and everybody in a spot where they're being judged on whether they stand or kneel or participate in the national anthem. And so if you just take it away, that controversy goes away. But at my age now, I understand why we got into the tradition of playing the national anthem. Sports are supposed to be an expression of America at its highest level. Our ideas and Americana and a meritocracy and fairness and inclusion, and everybody can compete, and the best man or woman wins. And so sports are the way we've used them throughout our society, have been unifying and a moment of pride and a celebration of Americana. And so we would start by playing the national anthem, because when you go to a Kansas City Chiefs game or Los Angeles Lakers game, it doesn't matter what the politics of the person sitting next to you are. We're all just Lakers fans, and you all just love the players and the organization, and it's just this regardless of how much money you got, how much money the person next to you got, what color they are, we're all just Lakers fans. This is a unifying moment. That's what we try to inspire here in America. And so I understood why and the importance of playing the national anthem and having that unifying symbolic moment. And so I would like for us to get back to that, but I'm not sure if we can, the way the national anthem has been manipulated into a very divisive issue.
This question's kind of tied in with that. Why do you think players and athletes should not be making political statements at sporting events?
Because it's never been, it not I say never been. It's not the right platform for that. We uh back in the 1950s, 60s, when there were laws on the laws denying black people their inalienable rights granted by our creator, documented in our Constitution and Declaration of Independence. When that was going on, when there were laws restricting our freedom and things like that, I understood why, and it made sense for John Carlos and Tommy Smith, the Olympic sprinters or whatever in the 60s, to protest during the national anthem. Made perfect sense. They're out representing their country, but there are laws on the books in their country denying them their freedom. Total sense. We're not in the 1950s and 60s anymore. There are not laws on the books denying our freedom. There are not, and these are just facts. Now, people are all Americans, uh, have some pure heart where there's no racism among individual Americans or groups of Americans? Absolutely not. That's never going to be the case. It's never been the case in the history of the world. And again, this is from my Christian background and understanding of the world, that once Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden fruit, sin entered the world, and and we're all capable of sin. And there's this myth like that racism and racial bias only flows one way, one direction. That's just not true. That's not factual. And then there's the myth that, like, oh my God, we have no power, so we can't be racist. That's not true. We do have power. And so racism flows every direction from every person, but they're not laws. And so the government can't come in and fix individual flaws within all of us. And so we're just in a different time, and we're the alleged racism that's so pervasive in America, uh it's so pervasive, but we're on a constant hunt looking for it, to the point that people invent racist hoax because they can't, there's not enough supply of racism, so they have to make it up. Uh, Long way of saying that uh, the athletes, where they're at right now, because they make so much money from corporate America, they have corporate puppet strings on them. LeBron James cannot be the next Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali wasn't in bed with a $40 billion corporation, global corporation like Nike. Once you put on those $1 billion corporate strings, you're not as free. You have to do the bidding and what's best for that corporation. Muhammad Ali didn't have those ties, and he was living in a different era, and he answered to a different group of people. Mostly, he answered to the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and the people running the Nation of Islam at that time, a group of black religious people. That's who he answered to. He didn't answer to Nike and Phil Knight. And so I think a lot of what LeBron is doing in his mind is well intentioned, uh, but it's inappropriate, misguided, ill conceived, doesn't lead to any positive change. Most of it is corporate branding, doing the bidding of Nike, who is doing the bidding of China because they want good relationships with China. And so I just think most of the athletes are out over their skis, and that athletes don't even realize they're struggling with their own identities. They're trying to be like Jackie Robinson and the athletes of the 50s and 60s. Things have dramatically changed since then, and their role isn't to be leaders in some sort of movement. Given their financial wealth, their role should be to finance some sort of movement or progress for Black people or issues they're concerned about. That's what they're qualified to do, finance those issues. Electing themselves the leaders of those issues is stupid. They're not well versed on the topics. They're not educated on the topics. When you think about the athletes at the top of the food chain, football, basketball, baseball, that's why these are some of the greatest physical specimens that we produce around the world. They have focused on developing their bodies and physicality. They have not, and I'm just sorry, this is just factual. They have not focused as hard on developing their understanding of the world and uh their their intellect. And I don't blame them. If I was born with that much talent, I was good enough to be a mid-major college football player. But if I was born with the kind of talent of a guy I grew up with, Jeff George or LeBron James or whatever, I'd focus on developing my physical skills so I could make that money, and then I would play the role of that it's appropriate for me. I can help finance things that I believe in. But as leaders and as, oh, we're going to run out and uh, point out America's racism that someone told me about, it's a joke. It's a mistake. It's the blind leading the blind. No other group. There's not white people. There's not Latino people. There's not Asian people that look to athletes or entertainers to be their leaders. But we as Black people continue to do that because we're told to, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I've never really truly been a fan of protests because I don't think I think there's more ways you can affect change. They're nice and they're cute for some time, but after that time, what do you do next? And so,
Well, none of the things they talk about are a real solution. Because if we as Black people really want to move forward in America, the number one issue we have, it's the police, and our engagement with the police might not even crack the top 100. But everybody knows what the number one is, anybody with a brain. It's the Black family. That's the number. As long as we keep producing kids that are born into families 75% of the time to a one parent situation, a single mama situation, it things can't get fixed or any better. And everybody knows this, but everybody wants to talk about, oh, we got to do some counseling and set up meetings for Black people in their engagement with the police. We need to be setting up meetings and conversations about how we can get along with each other. And everybody knows this. And this, again, why I'm considered controversial is because I actually want to stick to the truth and get to the heart of real issues. And the athletes, if they were motivated in the proper direction, that's what they would be talking about. It's like, hey man, we can't keep having illegitimate kids. Unsupervised kids get into a lot of mischief, a lot of negative mischief, and it's not the proper foundation for that kid to develop. And so, uh, I can't remember what you asked me, but
Yeah, we can move on. All right, how do we fix the number of black coaches in football and basketball?
uh, to me, that's a long term approach of we want to. The problem I have is we want to correct the finish line, and that's who gets to be head coach at the NFL, NBA level. And I think the only way to get better results at the finish line is to start at the starting line rather and so the solution is getting more black athletes or people interested in athletics to get them to take the proper steps at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old to prepare themselves to be head coaches uh, when they're out of college. Are they in position to become graduate assistants? And in order to be a graduate assistant, that means you got to graduate from college and be prepared to make very little money starting out because you got to pay those dues, and the graduate assistant jobs don't pay much. And so that means don't leave college with a kid, because if you got a kid, that's a hell of a responsibility and expense, and you're less likely to be able to take a job as a graduate assistant if you're burdened with a child. And so that's where I think the solutions are. Uh, and it's I don't think the NBA and the NFL and the little popular narrative that all these decisions are based on race. And the reason why there's not is because these owners at this they don't care. They just want to win. If an NFL owner is willing to make, I think the four highest paid players in the NFL are black quarterbacks, making around $40 million a year. A head coach in the NFL makes between 3 and 8 million, or 3 and 10 million a year, something like that. At the entry level is probably 2.5, 3 million. First year coaches, and so we think the narrative is like, oh man, they're just so racist. They just don't want anybody head coach. They won't pay a black guy 3 million to be a head coach, but they'll pay a black guy 40 million to play quarterback. It's a joke. They just want to win, and they just want whoever they think is qualified to lead their team. And so the solution is to fix the starting line and start working with young people in college in preparation for them being a head coach. When I was in college, none of my teammates who were black, I don't think we talk about it all the time. We never even thought about being coaches. We thought about other opportunities, and many of us, it was our first time. We were the first people in our family to go to college, and so the whole idea of graduating college, becoming a graduate assistant, and making no money, like, what did I go to college for if the first 2 or 3 years I'm not going to make any money? It never crossed our mind the steps to become a head coach. It wasn't even a possibility. And so now I deal with young people, and it's like there's a kid from my high school uh, who's on the Ball State football team now, and our whole conversation and everything has been built around how can I help you prepare, and how can we get you through this process so that when you're done playing football at Ball State, you're ready to start your journey as a coach. Because the kid from my high school, probably not an NFL player. He walked on the Ball State football team, and he'll play at some point, but our goal is to get you through this Ball State football program, get you into a graduate assistant job. I want the kid to be a head coach at some level, college, NFL level, by age 30. And so I think that we need more people in that mindset and more people trying to help young people get in that mindset at 18, 19, 20 years old.
All right, I'm not sure how much you can help me on this one, but I'm an aspiring sports radio host. What advice can you give me?
An aspiring sports radio. I used to do sports radio, but it's been a long time. It's tough because I don't. I can give you advice that works for me and my personality and my era. This era today, I don't understand as well, and it's so woke. I don't want to give you bad advice that cripples your career. And so there's almost, well, I will say this though in sports radio, you can get away with being less woke because sports radio, for the most part, still on AM radio, and radio tends to lean a bit more conservative for less of a. I'm not political, but I'm labeled as conservative, and so I guess I'll accept it to some degree. But uh, I guess my advice, taking the political environment out of the deal, is just like be ready to work really hard. Be ready to uh, not just have an opinion, but have an opinion you can back up with information. Have an opinion that you can express more creatively than everybody else. Uh, you know, be because a lot of social media and Twitter has made so many people all say the same thing. They're all getting their information from the same place. That uh, it's the people that are willing to do the extra work to have a unique take, uh, that have a chance to stand out. And so I would just, you'll get a lot of advice of sometimes in radio, but here's what they tell athletes a lot of times: just be you, just be. And they all think just show up and just give my personality. You're not a former professional athlete, but the advice is still the same. Be ready to put the work in. It's the guy that actually can provide unique information, unique insight, and express it more creatively than the other person who stands out and moves up.
You're a big Chiefs fan. They had a tough Super Bowl loss, but do you think they'll bounce back this upcoming season? Do you think they'll ultimately win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, look, I think that had Andy Reid's son not been in that car accident that tragically harmed two young people, I think they would have won the Super Bowl. I think they were distracted, and I think it was a very tough situation for the entire team. Obviously, a tough situation for the family whose young daughters were injured. But uh, I see where both of the Chiefs' offensive tackles, Eric Fisher and I think Mitchell Schwartz, are both moving on. And so I've seen some people be like, "Oh man, the Chiefs' window may be closing." Is Patrick Mahomes going to have the pass protection? I don't think the Chiefs' window is closing. I think we're going to be a strong contender next year to win the Super Bowl, and I kind of halfway expect us to win the Super Bowl. I think everybody in the organization is going to be hyper motivated, and particularly Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And so, I don't. I expect the Chiefs to be back in major contention for the Super Bowl.
All right, finally, this kind of ties everything together. Why do you think the Black Lives Matter movement has not been a good thing for our society?
Well, one, because I just think it's helped contribute to the racial division we have in this country. I think that uh, it has fixated and highlighted on skin color as a defining characteristic, and I think that the people that started it, their intentions were not good. They've admitted to being trained Marxists. They wrote on their own website that they wanted to disrupt the nuclear family. And so I think Black Lives Matters has been used as a tool to racially divide America. And uh, I think they've done just that. And I think that they fooled a lot of black people into thinking that this was some movement for black pride and black progress. And it's actually none of that. It's uh, an organization that's Marxist. And if you understand Marxism, and people need to look up and research and understand Karl Marx's political theory and how hostile it is to religion and religious faith, and how it's a promotion of socialism and communism. And if you think that America is oppressive and exploitive of people of color, you need to investigate communism and socialism's history with oppression and get a real understanding of that, and understanding of the lack of freedom, the lack of religious freedom, and just how, again, everybody, it's fashionable because you can get likes and retweets and followers based off it. It's fashionable to be express this anti-American sentiment, uh, but no one wants to leave here. Oh, everybody, hates America, or America is systemically racist, but they never have it. You know what? We should go here. They never have that, and so everybody wants to stay here, and there's a reason why, and there's a reason why people are beating down their doors, including black people and other people of color, beating down their doors to get into America, and it's because of our freedom, it's because of our religious freedom, it's because of the founding principles that were established hundreds of years ago. Even with slavery, those founding principles were accurate and right. It just took us a long time to actually live up to those principles, but we have and did. So I just think Black Lives Matters has promoted a lot of anti-American values, has misguided, misdirected a lot of black people, and it's promoted a lot of racial animosity, and has, uh, again, I've said in this interview, I had a cousin killed by police. In my family's opinion, wrongly killed by police. But Black Lives Matters has made black people and a lot of America think that the number one issue facing black people is our engagement with police. And it's just not true. It's a distraction. It's an intentional distraction to make us not focus on what our real issues and problems are.